right? The scrawny cows that people gave them to pay for the stuff that, like if they got credit at the tavern, table 1. I won't hesitate to remove someone from table for being the cattle thief. And Sam goes and tells him to go see Colonel Parsons, who he's working under, to see if he can convince Colonel Parsons to let him go. But then, remember, he kept saying that another general wanted... I know. Alright, page 182. I want to see Colonel Parsons, please, sir, I said. The adjutant stared at me through the half-open door. What about? Sam Meeker sent me. He's been arrested as a cattle thief. Colonel Parsons can't be troubled about that. But it's all a mistake, I said. He didn't do it. He was chasing the ones who did. The adjutant laughed. Sure, he said. He didn't steal the cows. They followed him out of the barn of their own accord. Please, I said. True. We were sitting there. Enough, he said. Colonel Parsons is in bed. Come back in the morning and perhaps he'll see you then. There wasn't any point in arguing with him, I realized. I would have to see Colonel Parsons in the morning. The cows were still loose, and I had to do something about them anyway. Thank you, sir, I said, and turned and ran back home in the next. In the brightness of the moonlight, it was easy to see the forms of 3 cattle standing in the middle of the snowy field. As fast as I could, I pushed out into the snow toward them. As I came up, I saw the 4th cow lying on the ground. It was dead, half buried in the snow, and its belly had been sliced open, with its guts glistening wet in the moonlight. The 3 living cows were staggering around in the deep snow and bawling unhappily. I found a stick in the tree line on the edge of the field and began driving the cattle home. It was a terrible job. They hated floundering around in the deep snow and balked constantly. It took me over half an hour to get them safely back into the barn. You're talking, you're not following directions. Mother was sitting in front of the fire looking worried. I saw you coming across the road, she said. Where's Sam? They arrested him, I said. The ones who stole the cattle beat him up, and then they said he'd stolen the cattle himself and marched him off somewhere. Back to the encampment? I guess so, I said. They'll let him go in the morning, won't they? I mean, all we have to do is explain it, don't we? She shook her head. I have a terrible foreboding, Timothy. I want to pray. The dead cow is still out there, Mother. I want to get it before somebody else does. We have to chop it into small pieces too, because neither of us is strong enough to carry off a whole side of beef by ourselves. Okay. Struggling to cut the animal off and carry it home. We hid it in the barn loft under the hay. It would keep well enough in that cold weather. Can you please open the book and turn to page 180? Half an hour before they let me in. Colonel Parsons seemed nice enough, but obstinate. I told him the story, but he shrugged. It surprises me that Sam would be taken for a thief. I thought he was a man of greater patriotism than that. But people fool you. He didn't do it, sir. Take this boy to General Putnam, he said. We walked up the encampment street past a long line of huts. They were identical, 100 of them with plumes of bluish smoke rising like a forest into the air. Soldiers were everywhere, cutting wood, cleaning things, drilling. Then we came to a house, bigger than a hut, but made of the same kind of logs. The soldier handed my letter to the guard at the door. The guard took it and signed. In 5 minutes, he came out. Just wait. I waited for half an hour, and then an hour, and then 2 hours. Officers went in and out, and still I waited. I just got hungry, but I didn't dare leave to go and search for something to eat. It became 1 in the afternoon, and then a soldier came out and brought me in. General Putnam was sitting behind a rough trestle desk they'd set up for his table. Jake set up for his desk. There were papers neatly arranged in ink bottles, pens, sand for blotting the ink, and a stack of maps. He was a big man of about 60 with lots of white hair. He wore the continental uniform of buff and blue. He did not look kind. Weaker? Yes, sir. All right, let's have it. He scared me. His voice was hard and his eyes flashed, but I told him the story exactly as it had happened, and I finished by saying, Sam wouldn't steal our own cattle. He just wouldn't. He's been fighting for 3 years. He's a good soldier, and he didn't do it, sir. I swear it. I know because... Enough, he said. My time's valuable. He shouted. Sergeant, take this boy up to the stockade to see Sam Meeker. See that they stay 6 feet apart and pass nothing between them. Thank you. Guard out. The stockade was situated just at the bottom of the slope, which dropped down into the encampment. Bella and Diana, look at the clock. It was a wooden hut, just like the others, but surrounded on all sides by a picket fence to give the prisoners a place outdoors to walk around in. Here, if I don't get it to you, Dayanara, here's the spelling list for this week. Right here.
It's true.
Something so
Sir Anthony, do you have your test in your card? Sophia, do you have your test in your card?
Okay.
It was a wooden hut like the others, but surrounded on all sides by picket fence to give the
take pictures.
a place where the card.
Take some
The place
pictures.
outdoors to walk around it. Card? I need the card, Sophia. Where's the card? Oh, she got her card. Okay. Oh, put these cards and count to make sure that. Yes? What is it? Can't wait now. Well, hurry up. To give the prisoners a place outdoors to walk around and just do it.
No, I'm not.
And
Of
your
course I
sign.
am.
Well, no.
The giant,
To give to
giant clock.
Giant.
with his toe about 6 feet from the fence. Stay behind that line. Sam's face appeared at the hole. He was dirty and unshaven, and his hair was uncombed. Boys, are you even paying attention? Where's Dad in? Why are you on the tablet? Are you still on the tablet? Good. What did he actually say, Sam said. Does he believe I'm not guilty? I don't know, I said. He didn't say. You're a good boy, Tim. Sam, how come they found you guilty? I guess I didn't score enough telling points, he said. No, really. The other men lied. They knew they were in for it right from the moment I spotted them in the training ground. I only saw one of them at first, and I leveled a musket at him. But the other one was down on the ground in the shadows, gutting the cow, and he came up behind me and stuck his knife point against my back. So they got me. They bashed me around a little, and they took me in. Oh, they were smart. They had a story all worked out about hearing somebody shout, "Stop thief!" and seeing me driving the cattle across the training ground and coming out to get me. And of course, I wasn't supposed to be home anyway. I was supposed to be on duty at the Betts' house. So that went against me, and that was that. What else can I do, Sam? Pray, I guess. Are you standing up and talking to somebody across the room? I tried to grin back. I better be. Come on, you, the guard said, as I waved goodbye and left. Should I reach out for you?
Yes.
It's just so unfair. He fought for them for 3 years, and now they're going to shoot him for nothing. Colonel Reed shook his head sadly. I know, Tim, he said. I know. War is never fair. Who chooses which men get killed and which ones don't? He touched my shoulder. You have to accept it now. Be brave and help your mother to bear up. She needs somebody now. But I didn't feel brave nor like bearing up. All I felt was angry and bitter and ready to kill somebody, if I only knew who. That day's church service seemed especially important, so everybody could pray for the souls of the men who were going to die on Tuesday. Mother refused to go. Instead, she sat calmly by the fire sewing. We're required to go, Mother. I'm not going, she said. They can murder who they like, church who they like, but I'm not going. For me, the war is over. I went, but after half an hour of sitting in the balcony where I sat beside Sam so many hundreds of times, I began to cry and I walked out. Nobody tried to stop me. I guess they knew how I felt. We closed the tavern early that night. Nobody was there anyway. I guess nobody wanted to be around us. It was too gloomy. I would like to close the place forever, Mother said. I noticed that she had stopped drinking rum, for it was always over and there wasn't anything left to be nervous about. It was Father's tavern, I said. I won't serve any more Continental officers, she said. Never again, never. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep that night, and I didn't think Mother would either, so I threw some extra logs in the fire and pulled chairs up in front of it. We've got to think of something, Mother. There's nothing, she said. Let the dead bury the dead. He isn't dead yet, Mother. He's still alive. He's dead, Tim, she said. He's dead as your father is. No, I said. I got up and took Father's bayonet down from the wall over the mantelpiece. Then I went out into the kitchen, took the steel out of the rack, and began to wet the bayonet. Mother didn't get up. She didn't say anything. I worked over the bayonet a good long time until I had an edge on it that would slice through a man like a hot nail going through butter. What a really good simile that is. Then I went out to the tap room and put on my coat. Mother didn't lift her eyes from the flame snapping over the log. I'm going to save my brother, I said. No, you're not, she said in a soft, whispery kind of voice. No, you're going to get yourself killed. Well, you might as well. Let's have it all done with it at once. How does the old line go? Men must fight and women must weep, but you'll get no more tears from me. I've done my thinking for this war. Girls, I stared at her, then I turned and went out the door, buttoning up my coat. There was plenty of moonlight shining on those fields of snow. It was almost as bright as daylight. I didn't dare walk along the road. You never knew who could be coming along. This meant that I had to work my way through woodlots and along hedgerows, across the pastures where the snow had not been packed as hard as it was on the road. Fortunately, it had begun to pack of its own weight, so that my feet sunk in only a few inches with every step. But it wasn't funny. Nothing seemed to bother me. I didn't feel tired, cold, or worried. My head was sort of out of focus. I didn't have any plan. I knew I ought to think of one, but I couldn't really get my mind working. All I could do was just keep going until I came to the encampment and then see what I did next. Finally, I came to the line of trees that ran along the ridge of the top of the encampment. I dropped into a crouch and slipped from tree to tree. There weren't many of them left. The soldiers had cut most of the wood for lumber and firewood. Then I came to the last tree, just over the edge of the ridge. I stopped and stared down. The ridge sloped down sharply for about 100 yards. The line of huts ran along the bottom, with the muddy road alongside of them, and here and there a cannon or wagon standing. There were corrals for horses and livestock, but hardly any people. Light came out of the chinks and cracks in the building. I figured he'd been cold and thinking about getting warm and not to sit too close watching around. I still hadn't made up any plans, but there didn't seem to be many choices. About out the only thing I could do was sit down there until the guard opened the gate and let the prisoners out. And if he spotted me first, I could try to swing the bayonet over the fence and hope that Sam could get himself out in the confusion. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was the only one I could think of.
The best glasses in the world. Wow. Subscribe to Brandon.
I want to be in anything.
All of your desks, please look underneath your desk. See if you need to pick up copies.
No, Brandon. Stop your back.
You can start studying.
Let's go.
Spelling words.
When it's time to go home. Oh yeah. No, dude, about the. Look at what we found in the boys' bathroom.
Another mirror or something. The other Amanda is hiding in a
Is that the video or what? It's been so long! You've been gone! I've been singing this stupid song so I can find it!
Better stop.
I don't fuck with you. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Alright, next song. I think it's Die in a Fire. Oh yeah, Die in a Fire. I've lost my patience. When are you gonna die? Just like my broken TV. If you'll come back once more, it shall be painful on your skin. I hope you die in a fire. Hope you're scared. Hope you get shot in the fire.
Yeah, man. I saw you. You're there.
Hope you're taken apart. This is what we desire.
Make sure you pick up your paper. Come on. You have to pick up all your paper.
Fly.
I saw you. The ones you threw. Pick them up when you go out.
Die. Your mechanical body. When I broke your bones. Get my second chance. I won't leave you alone. Oh yeah, I hope you die in a fire. Hope you get shot and expire. How? You'll be shot in the heart. Hope you get shot and expire. What the fuck? What are you doing? Oh my god, dude. hope you die in the fire. That was awesome.